chair, madam. We follow your lead.
All right, so I guess I'll hammer this out and call the meeting to order. So let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, and now we'll take a roll call.
Yeah. Commissioner Smith,
Present.
Vice Chair Manfredi,
Here.
Chair Gonzalez,
Here.
and Commissioners Zunino and Escobedo are absent.
So now I got to open it up to public comments. We have no one present here. And I don't think we have a Zoom today.
No, we do have a Zoom.
We do have Zoom? Do we have?
Yeah, we do have Zoom. I
Okay.
just didn't need to run it in the room, and we have no participants at this time.
Okay, great. So now we'll move on to regular new business. The first order of business is to pass a motion to approve the August meetings. Do either of you want to make a motion?
Second.
We got to make the motion.
Oh, yeah.
You want to make the motion to approve the?
Yeah, let's make a
Actually,
motion to
Chair,
approve it. Go ahead.
I would suggest for each item to just note for the record that you've opened it for public comment. I know
Right,
no
right,
one's in the
right.
room, but I would still recommend doing
I
that.
have that in my notes, but with no one in here, I forgot. So the first, thank you. The first item, right, is to pass the meetings for August. I'm opening it up to public comment. Again, we don't have anyone on Zoom or in the gallery here. So now, would anyone like to pass or make a motion to pass the meeting minutes from
Make
August?
a motion to pass it.
Do you want a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and the voting is not working for Mr. Manfredi or Ms. Smith. So I will, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries.
Okay, great. So next up is Chief Robertson with the Police Chief's strategic vision, goals, and values.
And hold on, I will open it for you. Oops. Sorry, Chief, give me 1 second.
You're good.
There we go.
Well, good afternoon. For those of you that weren't present for my interview, I talked about my strategic vision for the police department for the next 4 years in my interview, and I think that's what Chair Gonzalez was wanting to refer to when we talked about vision, mission, and goals. So let me start with our department mission. It's working in partnership with the community to protect life and property, and providing leadership in solving neighborhood problems and enhancing the quality of life in our city. Within that, I see my vision for the police department is to gauge the community of South Lake Tahoe to build the relationships that enhance, hang on, I'm gonna get used to clicking, that enhance safety with strategic action, internally build on existing knowledge, skills, and abilities to enhance our response profile, our investigative efficacy, and collective community to build our employees into future agency leaders. Succession planning is a really big part of what I want to do while I'm here. Part of the strategy to make those things happen is to be visible, available, approachable, trained, ready, responsive, and empathetic. In doing so, I want to express the values of, make sure that our agency expresses the values of gratitude, respect, excellence, accountability, and service. In gratitude, making sure that we're thankful for what we've been given both personally and professionally, and offer ourselves in service to the community. As far as respect, make sure that we recognize every person and that their situation is unique beyond what we can see, recognize the value of their personhood, and acknowledge their rights. In excellence, not to accept mediocrity, raise personal and professional expectations for you and those around you, continue to improve ourselves, our department, the community, and its relationships. For accountability, I want us to take responsibility for our time, our resources, and our conduct. Be a good steward of what we've been provided, act with ethical premeditation and integrity. And the last is service, serving with humility, excellence, care, impartiality, and empathy to engender trust. The acronym is GREASE. It's spelled wrong on purpose, so it sticks with my cops. So part of the strategic goals, I have 10 components to it, and kind of it bridges all of the spectrum of kind of police work within our community. So I have bullet points up there, but I have the longer dialogue to provide you, so stand by, we might be here for a minute. In building relationships with local businesses, and I want to collaborate with the motel owners. I want the shop owners, the restaurants, the convenience store clerks, and the grocery store personnel to create a network of eyes and ears in our community. We used to get into the community. We used to use these resources, and they were our intelligence. We are an intelligence-driven organization, and knowing who's who, knowing who's doing what, those eyes and ears on the ground become very important to solving the crimes after they've occurred, because you don't build relationships in that time where you're in crisis and have to solve that crime. Those relationships have to be built long before you get to that point. We want to be intentional about the messaging to the business community about potential enforcement impacts. One of the things that happened earlier this year, we were going to get back, I'm going to tell you some stories. We were going to get back to doing sign enforcement. And one of the things that we hadn't done the sign enforcement, really there had been a moratorium on it since COVID. And so we sent out a letter kind of letting everybody know that we were going to do sign enforcement again. And when sign enforcement hit, that was kind of in conflict with something that the city manager's office had going on. And so we kind of had to pull back and go a different direction with that enforcement, go more educational rather than issuing citations. And so what we learned from that was there's an impact on other divisions of the city, and we really got to make sure that we're intentional about the communication in that. So lesson learned already. Engaging with the residents. Foster strong relationships with residents by being visible in the neighborhoods. That means, making sure our patrol cars are out there being seen. They're cruising the neighborhoods. And being available and present in the conversations with people. That helps ensure not just actual safety, but a sense of safety. And it increases their willingness to kind of be supportive and engage in reporting suspicious and criminal activities. Social media. Okay, my next point is social media. We've kind of had fits and starts with social media. We had some people working our social media that weren't very adept at it. I was one of them. And so now we've got somebody that's really good at kind of keeping up with the social media. If you keep up with the South Tahoe PD social media, you'll see that weekly we post some of our stats. But we want to really make that portal a way that we're communicating public safety information, not only in the aftermath of events, but current things. So we got Highway 50 shut down for some event or some hazmat. We're putting that on social media so that the 20,000 followers that we have between Instagram and Facebook have that information immediately. So it's been a goal of mine for a few years now to hit 7,000 followers on Instagram. And I found out that we have just, 18,000? Yeah, about 18, between Instagram and Facebook, about 18,000 followers. I'd like to get that a little bit higher. Not everybody that does Instagram does Facebook. Facebook seems to be the MySpace of today. So we'll see where we can go with that social media messaging. Staffing, education, and training. The first point is recruitment and retention. And sometimes the best solution to recruitment is retaining the staff that you already have. There are special divisions within our organization that are very difficult to staff, dispatches being one of them. Recognizing that dispatch is an entity to itself, and it has different needs than the police officers have, and has different needs than the CSOs have, and records, and the detectives. And we have to recognize that each division has its own needs, and what we can do to make our small staff, or small agency, more interesting to our staff, and develop our officers and make their careers fulfilling, so they want to stay here in South Lake Tahoe. There's a little bit of resistance to engaging outside of our work hours, and I think some of that is overtime fatigue. And how do we relieve that overtime fatigue? We have overtime, so often that our guys, they're like, I'm tapped out. And so whether that's a staffing issue, whatever, I'll get to some of the staffing issues here a little bit later, but we want to make sure that our officers aren't resistant to engaging outside of their work hours, and it's not and it's not encumbering on their personal lives. Training and accountability and return on investment. One of the things we're working on is changing our field training program to provide an accountability model for our trainees, both weekly and during phase training. And that's going to include a weekly test, holding them accountable for the information they've been given by their trainer, and a phase test to make sure that they're accountable for the information that they have gotten from that trainer during that phase. At the same time, that provides the trainer accountability to make sure that they cover the topics that Post and our agency requires that trainee to master before they get off of training. Once the officer's off training, we send them to professional development. We send them to training all over the place. And one of the accountability models that I want to put in place is a train back program. So we're working on having our guys come back from training. They put together kind of a little 10-minute presentation on the training they went to, the things that impacted them most from that training, and what they can bring back to the agency and how they can impart that to their partners. Because a lot of our training as cops is not always formal. A lot of it's informal. I can tell you some of the best training I had was informal training from old guys that I worked with way back in the day. And now that I'm one of those, imparting that stuff to our younger guys. As far as leadership training programs, to develop and facilitate training programs, not just for new officer proficiency, but for leadership traits and skills in all staff. We want to develop people for successful leadership roles in future succession planning. You're right, I need to slow down, I felt that. Develop people for successful leadership roles in future succession planning. Rather than just pointing out where they need to go, we want to have a hand in that development. Staff benefits from networking. It brings out, when we bring out of area training and personnel to Tahoe for training, we got, post training, ICI training, leads training. And we want to have accountability for the training, including, like I said, including those officer debriefs. But if we can bring the training to us, we end up networking. We usually go off the hill for training, and that allows us a great opportunity for networking, see how other agencies are doing it, and learn that kind of the problems that we have are universal. Sometimes we kind of get stuck in this rut where we believe that our problems are unique, and they are not. I've been to several trainings down in the Bay Area for Cal Chiefs and found out that some of the things that we deal with are universal. And on the other side, some things that other agencies are struggling through, we've been through, and I've been able to give a helping hand and get another agency through that. So that networking is really important. And then formal education. Right now, we provide tuition and reimbursement and educational incentives for our officers to have formal education, 4-year degrees and terminal degrees, master's degree, whatever. And in the last probably 5 years, 6 years, maybe 7 years, I think we've had maybe six or 10 people get through a master's degree. So there's a tie, the research, I can't remember the research specifically, but there's a tie between like officer proficiency, use of force, and formal education. And I don't remember really the nexus there, but there is a tie there. And so making sure officers have that formal education, because I think that is another component to succession planning, is make sure people are ready to go through the door before that door ever opens. Patrol response and transparency. Like I said earlier, I want to increase patrol visibility. Research shows that highly visible officers impact traffic violation rates, provide crime prevention influence, and improve a sense of safety. And the visibility comes just not from visible patrol units, but anecdotal and data evidence. So a friend will tell 2 friends and tell 2 friends and tell 2 friends. We want to show our response and our proactivity through our online portal, which is Citizen RIMS, and through our Instagram, kind of our Instagram stats. As far as technology goes, last year we put in place Axon Fleet 3, which is our in-car cameras. It was an upgrade from our prior system, and this has built-in license plate readers. And since we've instituted that, we probably have, over 1 million hits on that. And the great thing is that provides us somewhere to go with investigations when we have a description of a car. The software is somewhat AI gifted, where we can search for different colors, different models, stuff like that. So that LPR has been significant. As far as the drone as a first responder, I'm sure you guys have heard that program. We just looked at a drone as a first responder program from Flock, kind of went through their program with them. I've had 4 meetings with them. For our city, our size, it seems like it's a little overkill. So I think what we're looking at is not drone as a first responder at this point in time, but we're looking at making sure that we have a drone available for situational awareness for our cops on high-risk scenes, for our SWAT team. We've even talked about using it for scene assessments for fire. So making sure that those things are in place. We have, every officer has issued a smartphone, and we've done a marginal job with making sure that our smartphone technology provides our officers an edge in the field. We've got a lot of apps on it. I think there's a few more things we can capitalize. So we're looking down that road and kind of, heads up, high visual horizon, making sure that we're seeing what technology is coming and make sure that we are positioned to capitalize on that. And one of the last things for technology is making sure that we can use our body-worn camera for quality control, for incident quality control. Making sure our officers are out there doing what they're supposed to do. I can't tell you how many complaints that we have quashed almost immediately with body-worn camera. I was not a proponent of body-worn camera when it first came out, and I got to tell you now, I'm a big fan. It has made a lot of complaints go away instantly, and so we're making sure that not just using that for complaints, but we're going to make sure that the quality control is used in that body. Quality control is seen in the body-worn camera, so we can address, training issues, knowledge gaps, stuff like that, before it becomes a bigger issue. Traffic control and traffic response. We get a lot of complaints about traffic, speeders, bicycles, scooters, and kind of integrating all those things, all those different vehicles into our community, especially on the shared use path, becomes dramatic. And so what we want to do is, manage the increase in traffic interactions. The assistant city attorney and I are working on scooter legislation for come back to council probably in early spring, so that we have something in place next year when scooters land back in Tahoe. But we have, like I said earlier, high visibility patrol. We have a motorcycle officer and bike patrols that have been out there this summer, and we're working on with Public Works on some traffic calming measures in some areas where we've got complaints of speed. As far as going on with bicycles and scooters, we've wanted to launch campaigns. We've looking at launching campaigns and have launched it with the SRO in the schools. Is having educational stuff that goes along with understanding and knowing how traffic laws work when you're riding like your e-bike or your scooter to school and just shooting through traffic. We've been working with the scooter operators for enhanced safety measures, signage, training, and public engagement. Where I don't know if you guys go to Live at Lakeview. They were there a couple times at Live at Lakeview. I think Scooter and Bird were both there, kind of doing community engagement stuff, but making sure that people know the rules. Yeah, we get a lot of people that come to town during the summer, and so our learning curve is quite steep, almost constantly. But we'll make sure that engagement. So what they've done is they put a lot of that training into their sign-on for the scooter to make sure that people have to at least acknowledge that there are rules. So we also, there's some data collection techniques that we're using for speed assessment in some neighborhoods. Basically, we have hidden radars to kind of see what this, because we'll get a complaint of speed, and then we'll go out there and we'll do a speed survey, and our box will show that, people were maybe 2 or 3 miles an hour over. Lakeview was a good example. We did that a few years ago. That Lakeview was only 3 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, not the 50 or 60 that some claims were made. And yeah, there probably is that outlier screaming down the road, and to make sure that the cop is in place for that fraction of a second is near impossible unless you want this omnipresent police force that nobody wants. We're also looking at increasing the number of people in our traffic collision investigation team. That's usually used for kind of high profile or high liability stuff where we get a vehicle versus ped or a bike versus vehicle or something like that, where we have a death. And we use that expertise because they've been to these advanced traffic schools. We use their expertise and their specialized equipment to map out that thing so we can hand off significant and usable evidence to a prosecutor if that ends up being a manslaughter charge. So crime prevention and response. So for community policing, we want to encourage our officers to interact with officers to interact with residents and visitors in both business and leisure settings, to build trust and gather information that might result in actionable intelligence, as I mentioned before. We want to collaborate with our community partners. One example is we're working with the village in trying to get, we went over there for a site assessment, a vulnerability assessment, trying to work with them and putting some things in place that will enhance the safety over there and kind of protect vulnerable people from things that they don't know may happen. Like a car drives up onto the sidewalk over there. So we're looking at some infrastructure changes over there, but working with our partners kind of to make sure that some of those things can happen. And other things like, the traffic or the parking enforcement over there, and some barricades to prevent people from driving through the center of the village complex. High visibility patrol was mentioned earlier, increase the cumulative time and number of patrol units consistently on the road. That means being efficient with our time, making sure that our officers aren't stuck, in report writing all day long. There are several state mandates for reports that we have to do, and it takes quite a bit of time from our officers being on patrol. And if we can streamline those, make those more efficient, we can get our cops out there more often. One of the things that we changed going into the school year is making sure that, people like, hey, I like seeing a cop in the parking lot of my kid's school, making sure that the cops are in the parking lot of the school when the drop-off is happening. So those are some of the little changes that I think are going to benefit us with that high visibility patrol. The school resource officer at the middle school is one of the things that I'd like to see, and we've had preliminary conversations with Dr. Cutler about it, and we both recognize the need and are looking at some outside sources for funding. We'll see if that actually happens. But for us, it's a twofold approach. Is one, there's a lot of stuff that goes on at the middle school. We need to have an SRO there to kind of mitigate that. But the other component is, and this is kind of my personal belief, is that your time in junior high is like the last time you'll be kind of moldable outside of your cohort of friends. And having an example and a mentor that you can look up to and go, hey, might be a viable job for me, in 10 years or something when I'm out of middle school. But you have that mentor and you kind of have that model. And so I'm hoping that the SRO serves two purposes. One, to home grow some of our future cops, and to provide the necessary support for the middle school. One of the things that we've worked on is improving our detective patrol collaboration. Our detectives and our patrols work really well together. As far as cases go, one of the things I'd like to see our detectives do is take their expertise and training back to patrol. Sometimes it's hard to do. We got our patrol guys running all the time, and we got our detectives on cases all the time. But to make sure we have some time where we can cross over and we can have detectives talk about how to write a search warrant, have our detectives talk about the complexities of Miranda and the nuances there. Some of those, how to do an interview, how to do a successful interview, and just kind of how to do an investigation, those little things, and have the detectives go out there and kind of bring patrol up to speed on that stuff, but long before those patrol officers get to detectives. Kind of disseminate the knowledge, skills, and abilities to them that they've been gifted by the agency and the state. We're, as far as detective technology, making sure that we review and analyze technology for best practices in investigation. We talked about this a few weeks ago, I think, at council, where we used to call them high-tech investigations, and now it's just a regular investigation. Everybody's got a cell phone. All the data for whatever they did is on it for some reason. And so making sure that we have the assets and resources that our detectives can have real-time intelligence instead of waiting for somebody else to do the analysis, come back to us a month or two later, and then us carry on the investigation. That's proved very successful in a couple of murder investigations where we were able to develop in real time the intelligence that kept our case moving forward. So we're constantly looking at those technologies and making sure that we're not keeping things that are obsolete, and making sure we're doing a usage analysis to make sure we're getting the bang for our buck. I'm sure you've heard of VHRs. We are trying to we're developing our new VHR program. We got a new CSO supervisor on board, 4 new CSOs, and we're making sure that in the VHR space that we're providing the adequate enforcement. a lot of it's going to be, education, I think at first, but we're going to go out there and it's going to be, I mean, if there's somebody's in the VHR world and they haven't seen what's gone on in council in the last 6 months, I think that's naive. But I think we're going to go out there and hit the ground running once we start getting those complaints rolling in pretty heavy. And if we don't get the complaints rolling in heavy, perfect. And then the other thing that's come up recently is bear response. We want to make sure that we're partnering with agents, with responding agencies for a best practice in dealing with bears in the city and improve enforcement of the codes that implicate the human involvement in bear conflict. We're on 6 out of 10. Hang on. Does anybody need a break? Emergency management, planning, and preparedness. One of the things that we worked on is that, and this came out of Caldor, is that I had some training in ICS in the incident management structure, and realized that not everybody was fluent in that language. And so one of the things we pushed through in the last year or two is making sure that our officers at least had a basic understanding of the language of emergency management. So they all went through ICS 100 and 200 to make sure that they understood, if I say something and I talk about NIMS or I talk about the planning P, that they understand what I'm talking about, especially when they get tasked with things coming out of, the emergency operations center, or they get tasked with something coming out of a incident management team, that they understand what's been asked of them. So that's happened over the last year and a half, making sure that they understand law enforcement's role in that, in emergency management, because law enforcement's role and fire's role, two different things. Internally, I want to make sure that we were teaching evidence-based life-saving techniques for trauma care, such as tactical casualty combat care, to all of our sworn officers and all of our professional staff. We're the police department. I mean, other police departments have been attacked and, officers injured just at the police department. So I want to make sure that all of our staff has, training like stop the bleed, stop fight, or run, hide, fight. Making sure that our staff's up to speed on those things, rather than they just, cower behind their desk and they've got nothing. I mean, yeah, there's guys in the building with guns, but what do you do when somebody goes down? And so I think our SWAT team leader and our SWAT team are going to take that on and make sure that TCCC happens. I met with Tina from our citizen emergency response team last week, and it was interesting to find out her background. She's been doing it for about 7 years, and I think our CERT team here locally is pretty well positioned to be effective. I think that they just need better engagement from the city. I talked to her about that and how we could kind of dovetail some of the things that we do with CERT, how we could bring CERT into that program, and so I think that collaboration, that relationship, I think those are going to pay off when when we get into that emergency management, emergency response, and recovery, period. As far as other emergency response stuff, and this also came out of Caldor, and I didn't know that they were working on it, but I met with them and found out that they actually had things in place. One of the things we did in Caldor was we had to find the people that the vulnerable populations that weren't able to evacuate. Those of you that know Ryan from the Cal Tahoe JPA, the ambulance company, he was able to call on some assets and resources I didn't even know existed to kind of deal with kind of the people that couldn't get out. Well, we didn't know who those people were until we started compiling a list. So one of the things that I met with the John Stewart Management Company, who handles Sierra Gardens, Sugar Pine, and Sierra Vista, is that they're developing those lists already. Who are their vulnerable tenants, and what are those vulnerable tenants' needs? So that when everything hits the fan, they're a collaborating partner that's already developed a list of things that we need to figure out how we're going to get that to them. So that's been a great eye opener that they're taking a proactive position in getting all that stuff in case something hits the fan here. So public messaging, engagement, and campaign. So we used to do these cards where if somebody left their skis, and this is going back to somebody left their skis in their ski rack, and the ski rack was unlocked, we'd put a little card like, hey, you left your ski rack unlocked. People steal this stuff. I want to go back to making those, kind of those little gifts to people, like, hey, think about this. Yeah, it's Tahoe. Some people don't lock their doors anywhere, but it's not the Tahoe of yore. You need to take your safety and your property into consideration when you're leaving stuff behind. So, safety measures related to stolen snowboards, skis, bicycles, and kind of provide a little training on best practices. I know. The chair and I had talked about bait bike programs, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about that. But that's one of the things that we're looking at as well. But providing the best practices on social media, theft cards. Maybe we can work our way to in-hotel media on the channel that sells you the spa massage too. Spa massage and keep your bike safe. So we want to host, and I'm not sure we have the capacity yet, but we want to host digital safety workshops and community events to educate both residents and visitors, and focus mostly on the digitally vulnerable. And when I say that, I'm talking about like the kids, the elderly people, the people that aren't really tech savvy, or they think they are, and they're making themselves a victim. Where the junior hires are posting nudes, and I'm like, and transmitting those, and then you have the elderly people sending green dot card money to someplace out of the country, and making sure they understand that they have the capacity on their own, and kind of teach them and train them how to see some of the things that are fraudulent. As far as so I talk about the Police Advisory Committee. One of the goals of the Police Advisory Committee was cultural competency, and I think that goes two ways. And I think that if we can get the Police Advisory Commission and our audience to understand a little better the police culture and where we come from, why we do the things we do, and why we react the way we do, I think that helps bridge the communication gap between us and the community. I talked earlier about social media, Instagram and Facebook, but we're trying to get better about using those platforms to showcase our work, and make it a timely conduit to provide local safety information, and be consistent about it. That's the thing, is sometimes, we're on Johnny on the spot for a couple weeks, and then we drop off. And I want to make sure that we're really consistent with that, so that it becomes almost an expectation from the community that we're going to lead the narrative when stuff happens. As far as data analysis of policing, we have a new records management system and a new computer-aided dispatch system, and it is full of data. And we are still, I think we're 4 years in, and still working with the manufacturer to see what data we can extract from it. So we're looking at to improve our efficiency and modify our procedures if we must, to make our response times go down, or make our cops more efficient in their time, and use the data analytics to allocate available resources effectively. Just the last month, I had a overtime analysis done with one of our interns, and so it's provided some pretty insightful stuff. And so we're hoping to do that with the data from the last 3 years, and kind of see some trends, see some departures from trends, and see how we can capitalize on reporting like that for workload analysis and task coding. One of the things I talked about in my interview was reviewing a couple of platforms for community engagement as far as our cops going out and responding to the community. And then I talked about Axon My90, Versaterm, and SpiderTech. What I've discovered since then is that probably the best platform for all that had multiple components to it. So we've settled on Power DMS, and that's going to have a component for community engagement. It's almost like a buzzer for your table. Oh, your table's being cleaned. Oh, your waiter's coming to get you. So it's going to have some of the notifications there. We haven't figured out yet how we're going to do the service rating component, because you never want the cop in your life until something really bad happens. And so when really bad things happen, that's not really where you're in your best mind space to receive a customer service feedback. But that Power DMS is also going to, we're abandoning another system so that we can incorporate into this, but it's also going to do our use of force tracking. It's going to do our field training officer program as far as the training for the FTO to provide to the trainee, and the accountability for the trainee to come back, sign off the things that they're responsible for, do their testing, et cetera. It's going to be a platform in which we can make sure that our internal affairs investigations all have our time and date stamped, and follows the process according to POBR. And then there's one more component to it. I couldn't remember what it was, but the last one is the service feedback. So we've we've been publishing some of our data through public-facing portals. Like I said earlier, Instagram has been a way that we're publishing some of our, calls for services, calls for service, arrests, citations, traffic collisions, stuff like that. And I don't know if you guys seen it, but we turned on Citizen RIMS. And it's basically a map of the city. It shows calls for service in the last week or so, and you can go on there and kind of see what call for service happened in whatever block of the city. It's limited data because we think it's important to protect victim and suspect privacy, as well as it'll tell you what the categorization of the crime was, but it won't give you the specific charge. So I think some of those things we've intentionally withheld information, but it gives you some idea what's going on in the rest of the city. We've talked about, putting our RIPA data out at the end of the year, and I think we do include that in our annual report, but, we're talking about putting out that so it could be reviewed monthly. Use of force stuff, 911 call center numbers, crime stats, and a heat map. So I don't know that the crime stats and the heat map are gonna go together. I don't think that's a component of Citizen RIMS, but that's the software we have. So we're seeing what we can do with it. Like I said, we've had it for 4 years. We're still discovering things it will do that we did not know at the outset. In looking at what we're doing as a police department and where we're going as a police department, we want to make sure that we have some identifiable metrics. The quantitative metrics are always easy. How many cites, how many arrests, how many traffic stops, how many FIs. Those are always easy to quantify. But how do you show qualitative improvement? And I think that's where our quality control stuff through body-worn camera comes. How are we changing as an agency? How is our culture as an agency being seen? And do the review. What are the stats, but what do they mean? And kind of dig into those a little deeper. Because the qualitative measure of the police department, I think, is much more important than the quantitative. And I've talked for years about how there's this weird nebulous algorithm that makes a good cop. There's like 35 different components, and I might not be the best at traffic stops, but I'm off the chart on warrant writing, or I'm really good at FIs, or I'm really good at community engagement. But there's this weird algorithm that makes a good cop, and we don't want to pigeonhole everybody into like the five standard stats. How are you doing on these things? So we recognize that, and we're making sure that we have some good qualitative review on that. In those metrics, we want to make sure that we get officer participation, especially for defining their workload and assigning their work time to categories. So they understand that the classification of the work time improves the understanding of their workload. It enhances transparency for the public about what their time is used and provides analytics to justify shift staffing. Overstaffing on the weekend, understaffing on the weekday. Where do we need to move that? Do we need a lot of cops on Tuesday night? That's the slowest retail day of the week. So probably not. But providing those numbers and getting those numbers will allow us to develop that workload assessment so that we can justify whether we need additional officers at some point. I think the concern, and this has been expressed by some people in the POA, is that those analytics become basically the sergeant in the trunk, and it's the cheap and easy way to do an employee evaluation. And like I said, getting away from the quantitative evaluation of an officer and making sure you're looking at the quantitative measure of that officer, I think that undermines the use of those stats for that. But stats have a value, and so I understand the value, but I also don't want to weaponize them against the officers. So, as far as agency efficacy and review, I'm like 2 slides behind you guys. Oh my gosh, there we go, just one, okay. We have reviewed our Lexipol manual, and we're trying to make sure that our policy reflects our practice, and we're modifying as necessary to make sure that we comply with the law, best industry practices, and best agency practice. We've identified procedure manuals that need to be created or updated in the agency, and we want to make sure those reflect our practices as well. There are practices that we have that are kind of cultural. We want to make sure that we have a written directive that identifies those. One of the gaps, oddly enough, was we didn't have a bear response policy. Right, we have a lot of bears, and what are we doing with them? So last year, we crafted a general order centered on a bear response policy. And I think that based on what's the conversation we're going to have in council, we may end up enhancing that bear response policy, but we had a bear response policy that we had to develop because it wasn't there. So we're looking at things like that, making sure we close those gaps. At some point, and I'm not sure what point, I want to do a 360 evaluation to find an agency-wide perspective on our agency and its leadership, and use that survey to determine agency blind spots. We all have them. I mean, they're called blind spots because you can think you know it, but you don't. But see those blind spots and identify, admin, supervisor, officer, staff, and individual leadership and training needs, and who needs what. Making sure that everybody's getting the thing that they need, not that everybody gets the same thing. And then once we get through that spot where we've identified all the things that we need to have our policy in line, make sure that we have our workload analysis kind of running effectively, we want to do an external agency evaluation and have a third-party disinterested observer come in, look at our agency, look at our workload analysis, look at our policies and procedures, see that things are being done as they should be and as they are described in policy. And our plan right now is to contract with the International City Managers Association Center for Public Safety Research and get them to come in and do an analysis of our agency. I've read the analysis from a couple other agencies and found that they recommended like a restructuring. This is not an efficient use of the personnel over here. Move a non-sworn person over here, move the sworn person over here, move, other people from patrol to detectives. They have this rule of 60s, and that's really kind of what we're chasing down. 60% of your agency is on patrol, and 60% of your patrol time is assigned. So that you have 40% of that time to be out there in the field, being highly visible, having that influence on the perception of safety. And then we want to pursue accreditation. We looked at the agency is called CALIA. They're on the East Coast, but we looked at their accreditation. It's a national accreditation. As a matter of fact, it's international now. I had breakfast with some people from Guadalajara that were getting their accreditation through CALIA. But what I recognized that their standards are very East Coast. California is kind of a different animal as far as Post is very involved in how officers do their work, and Post is very involved in the regulations. And so we want to find an accreditation that is really kind of California specific. Coincidentally, the California Police Chiefs is putting together an accreditation model for California specific agencies. So once that finalized, I'm going to take a look at that and see if we can pursue our accreditation through the Cal Chiefs. Going back to CALIA, I looked at the standards that they have, and even though we have Lexipol policy as like kind of our guidelines between law and policy, there's still 121 pages, not items, but pages of items that we would have to address between now and then. And so CALIA talks about a 3 to 4 year process to go through your program and to get that accreditation. And it sometimes take big agencies have an entire team to do that accreditation and vetting process, because you have to provide evidence of every single policy and every single procedure that you have to get that accreditation. And so with 121 pages of different items that have to be addressed, I didn't know if we had the capacity to take that workload on. So that's why I want to take a look at the Cal Chiefs California specific accreditation, see what that looks like. And then the last item is budget management. I want to make sure that we're good stewards of the city's of the money that the city's given us from the taxpayers, and ensure that the police department's budget is continuously analyzed for efficiency and with a forward-looking perspective. Because we have large annual and large 5-year expenses. Like we just re-upped our Axon contract for $1 million at $200,000 a year, and that's a 5-year contract. We have some things that cost, some software systems, multiple software systems that cost us on an order of, $100,000 a year. So we want to make sure that we have the capacity to look at those, understand whether those are being utilized effectively, what we can do to change that. One of the things we got rid of, we had a VHR platform that would scour the internet for VHR violators. That was $100,000 by itself a year. One of our former code compliance investigators found a different software. We're paying $15,000 for basically the same service. So it's a constant reevaluation, looking at the marketplace, seeing what's out there and how we can capitalize on what, some some box software rather than having somebody create something for a special. One of the things that I found when I came into Lieutenant Crivelli's position is that I wasn't literate in department budgeting. And so kind of my reinforcement with Lieutenant Crivelli is that I want to make sure that he's competent in that and that he understands that, he speaks that language. And then his goal will be to teach his successor the same thing, so that we have this organizational competency in our budgeting. So it's not this thing that we hide in the closet and don't talk about this dirty thing over there. That's been important to me because never has it been discussed as openly as I think it has been in the last few years, where we have our supervisors now understanding how the account chart works for the city and how you have to pay things out of certain accounts, even though it doesn't fall under the one word description for that account. So that's been important. We want to continue to exploit grants for things like alcoholic beverage control stings, those grants, traffic grants. We get a grant from the state from Department of Boating and Waterways for our boat. Continue to capitalize on that grant. I think didn't we just get the one for the engines? Yeah, we just got a $105,000 grant from California Boating and Waterways to put new engines on our boat. Our boat is 9 years old, and I think it's still the original engines, so we're getting new engines for that thing. But continue to seek those grant opportunities to complement our mission without extending beyond our management capacity. Whether that grant is for SRO, a tech detective, or stacks, or PERT response, I think those are just merely demonstrative of our need, but make sure that we're looking at those. And then within our budget, within our department budget, maintain a strategic reserve. And if Olga's listening to this, she's probably cringing right now. But when I talk about that, I'm not talking about anything more than we have asset forfeiture money. And it's just set aside an account and making sure that if something comes up that a need comes up that we cannot fund, that we have just a little pinch of dollars over here to make sure we can make that happen. Any questions? I have a question slide. Oh, it died. Okay.
Oh, man. Welcome to the chief role on the Police Advisory Commission, where you're 90% of our agenda.
Right.
Thank you again for going over your plan. One of the things at the interview that I was impressed with was that you had one, which was really cool. I think, though, and you and I have talked about this separately, my ongoing concern generally with law enforcement is this idea that visibility breeds safety, right? And I think still a lot of marginalized populations, especially in this change of administration where the lines between law enforcement and immigration enforcement are so blurred at this point, that I'm just generally concerned, like more patrol cars, what does that mean? What does that look like? More uniformed officers on the streets, what does that look like? That really does create fear in certain populations. And so to hear it emphasized so much is a little bit of a concern for me. So I guess like my question is twofold.
Okay.
The first being, how are you identifying how marginalized folks feel about law enforcement present? And then the second one is just like, who is also asking for more visibility? Because I do think that this community has some very vocal players, and probably the people who are most scared to speak up likely aren't coming forward and being like, no, I don't want this.
So let me address the first thing. The number of officers and the number of cars, they're not changing. It's just we're going to be able to get them out away from the station a little more often. So we're not increasing our numbers. As far as the marginalized communities, let me go back to the complaint. So I've had complaints that they don't ever see cop cars in the neighborhood. Without getting into the big brotherish issue there, we have GPS in our cars, and so if necessary, I could pull the data and kind of map out like where everybody's been. But as far as the marginalized communities, I think I've probably right before I took this role, I went over to Cafecitos. And because immigration that jumped off in January. And I think the first time I met with the people at Cafecitos was March. And I've met with them, I think 3 times and kind of gauge their, try to talk to them about, you know, the difference between local law enforcement and the difference between us and immigration, and kind of some of the things that have happened with immigration, you know, and they've had some asks of us that I can't provide that. You know, they're like, hey, can you call us when ICE is in town? I go, I'm not going to do that. They have the authority they have the same law enforcement authority, but on a federal basis. And so I think that kind of answers the questions. Like, yeah, there's some demand for more visibility from our cops. The research shows that and it's not providing safety, it's the sense of safety. You know, so to understand the difference, like I can't go into the time machine and prevent crime from happening, but I can give that sense that somebody's out there, somebody's watching.
Thank you. I think, and I've flagged this for you, so I feel like I'm just bringing it transparency, some of the conversations that we've had. Like, as much as I've worked with law enforcement, right, seeing a cop car for me still sometimes puts me a little like on edge.
Especially in your rearview mirror.
Well,
It
especially
does
that.
for me too.
No, but it's just something like that I definitely flag, and it's not this is not unique to you or like just or local police, state police, or federal police. This idea of visibility and more uniforms, and like who does it create the sense of safety for? I think it's still a question that I feel like needs to get played with a little bit more. So, because that who is defining what that is still like a question that I don't think is as clearly answered for certain populations. And I do think, and Chief Stevenson was also good at this, of just always explaining the distinction between local law enforcement and federal law enforcement, especially immigration enforcement. But the idea of a cop still has, like, what is a cop? What does that mean? Still has an image that I think is very much, I guess not always clearly addressed.
And that's when I meet with Cafecitos, there's one lady there, I think the first time I was there, she probably had 15 questions. I was like, good for you. But one of the things that we emphasize is the uniform. You know, I mean, we're the boys in blue. You know, I mean, nothing against the sheriff's office, but, you know, I mean, we're clearly distinctive from federal law enforcement when you see them show up in, you know, in their khaki pants, their black, you know, their black polo shirts and their green plate carriers. So I kind of emphasize that, like, look, this is what we look like. You know, we're not showing up, you know, smashing down doors unless it's, you know, unless there's a purpose behind it and paperwork behind it. And that was funny because we got into that whole thing about, you know, what is my obligation if somebody comes knocking on my door and says they're police? And I was like, you know, comply up front and complain later. You know, and unfortunately that's the safest way to go. But I'm off on a tangent.
I appreciate the clarification on that. I think having increased presence really does improve a sense of safety. And I'm happy you guys had this discussion, because when you're saying your vision as a chief is qualitative versus quantitative, I think that's the perfect way of defining presence, meaning your interaction has a purpose and it opens the dialogue, which you've already been doing. So my question to follow up on that and to kind of abate concerns that people have that the uniform might make is, what does that look like as far as the community engagement that you suggested you would like to have? Because I think your approach is perfect with that you want people to be more aware of police culture, you want to have more positive police interactions, that you are building that before, as you said, before the crisis happens. So I think your approach is exactly what this community needs. Question is just, what does that look like? Does that mean doing more like citizens academies, or just more individual events where you have that opportunity for dialogue?
Yeah, so I think that it goes down to, you know, it boils down to, like, not the organization, but the individual. I mean, relationships are built one-on-one. We're not building relationships with our Instagram. I mean, it's funny, like, takes a person to build a relationship, but one post from somebody will tear down, you know, will alienate you from a million people, and you'll never catch up. But one-on-one, you know, so it goes down to those interactions with that the officers have with the hotel staff, the interactions the officers have with the courtesy clerks, the interactions the officers have, you know, with the vendors out on the street and whoever they're dealing with, because you build that relationship one-on-one. We have some officers who, you know, people call them directly. They don't even call dispatch for issues. You know, they'll call the officer directly and go, hey, I got this going on. And I'll go, okay, let me go make a call for service and we'll see if we can deal with this. You know, so that relationship is built one-on-one. And I don't know how to do it in mass. You know, I mean, we can do a public presentation. I like small presentations because you get the opportunity before and after to kind of build a relationship. Zoom is horrible for that. You know, I mean, the most awkward thing is a Zoom sign off, like, you know, but after a meeting closes, you know, you can stand around and talk with somebody, talk about their dog, talk about their life, whatever. And it's those little interactions that kind of build that relationship and personify the police and bring humanity to the police, you know. And that's the goal, is really to make sure that everybody's on board for those interactions personally.
I got a lot I want to say.
Bring it.
But first of all, I understand what both of you are saying. And I understand law enforcement. And knowing this department and other departments, interacting with the people is the best way to bring that connection. One of the biggest things that's going on, like you mentioned, what about ICE? What about federal? And Chief, you just said it. I'm not doing that. That's key, because that is what people want to hear. You're not federal. This is a city. This is our home. As a personal experience, when you wear a uniform, whether it was military or police uniform, interacting, hey, helping somebody take groceries in because they're 90 years old, I'd stop the car and do it. That's what I see here, builds that community. And you are going to have those people that are afraid, or they're taught that by their parents or other families coming from other parts. We're not going to get away from that. But what this department has is the community policing. When I see the police out there, I don't look at, okay, are they going to pull me over? What I look at is they're out there. It's some safety there. And especially people that are getting older, you know, they want to see that. Those that want to be mischievous, that's a different story, you know, and you're going to have that. But what's important is, like you said, schools, and high schools is important. Middle school is now important, because that's where it starts. So with that, I think you guys are doing great. I mean, having that presence is important, and the more they see it, the more it gets adapted and people become used to it. And like I said, it goes down to today's environment, ICE. And believe it or not, it's all over the place. Everybody's talking about it, and it's not going away. And we be honest. Now, I do agree with you with have little get-togethers, not Zoom, but it's like, okay, you know what, we're gonna have something on bikes or on scooters. Put it out there, have people, you know, come, attend, get to know them, you know. Maybe have, and I don't know, do you have a program for like kids or ride-alongs or something like that?
Yeah, we do a ride-along program. Our police activities league kind of fell apart 15 years ago.
Okay, but some like that, at least people get more engaged, which was good. That's on that part. Now, I'm gonna bring up some other things, so that you brought in, I loved your presentation, it was good. You have great vision, and a lot that needs to be done. And I'm sure you'll get that done. But one of the things that kind of hit me is training. Okay. Training's important, as you know. And you talked about training with other elements and other agencies and other departments. Do you have a train-the-trainer within the department?
We do on certain topics.
Okay. Maybe one of the things I was looking at, like getting a master's or bachelor's. All right, how many of your officers have bachelor's? You know, and that is important. Do you have a program with like Tahoe Community College? Or some type of an agreement with that?
No.
Okay. And I bring it for a reason, because I did that when we were in the Marine Corps. And I established with the community colleges, try to develop a program to where they could go to a class, get the electives out of the way to get that bachelor's, to lead them in leadership and get them into the master's. And one of the things that I did with my guys, when I commanded them, was one of the requirements, like we have this book reading requirement, but one of my requirements was within the year, you had to have 2 classes. And 50% of them ended up getting their bachelor's. Because by the time the 6, 7 years were up, they had a degree. So they had the elective. You could do the mandated reading, read the book, so many books so often, or take a course. And I'm more than happy to help with that in any way we can. The other thing is human training.
I'm sorry, what?
Human, you talked about intel,
Okay.
human intelligence
Yep.
training. Have you guys had any of that type of training?
Yes, our detectives get some of that in some of the ICI classes that they get.
Yeah. What about the local law enforcement, your regular police officer?
Not by that title.
Some type of title on how to deal with the public, and you call it whatever you want. I say that because when we converted over, and I was on this board, when we converted the interrogators in the military, because of Abu Ghraib, obviously, we went to human intelligence. And now everybody became, every operator, human intel. Everything that they heard from Afghanistan, Iraq, or even at home has intelligence value. And then we start teaching them how to, for the intel asset, how to bring that together. I'm just bringing that up. We can talk more about that if you want. Like,
Yeah, that's one
my
of the things
realm.
that we have access to a lot of information, but to make it actionable intelligence, that takes the collaboration. That's why it's mostly within the detective division, because they take in this massive amount of information, and with context, they can make it actionable intelligence.
Okay, perfect. Which is great. And then, one of the things I look at, and I think we just discussed this a little bit ago, how are you or your department handling PTSD within law enforcement?
So do you know about our wellness programs?
I do.
Okay, so I think we have 4 or 5 different layers. We have EAP, which is within the city. We have our peer support team.
Okay.
We have our Mindbase app, which is anonymized.
Yep.
And then we get into other programs, whether you're seeking that through your own insurance, or you end up at a first responder support network. So we've got several different layers to it. One of the layers that's being added is kind of that personal relationship going through our chaplaincy program. So it's more, it's not like it's anonymized like it would be on an app, but it's anonymized because it's somebody that doesn't regularly participate in your department. So that's an additional layer that's being added. So as a matter of fact, I was in a meeting last night where we're trying to ramp that up with some funding. And that's right, and PT Revolution, they provide it as well.
Does everybody get training on that, on PTSD? On the aspects of it, what it is?
I don't know that they get specific training on PTSD, but we have the discussions about wellness quite a bit.
Okay. Have you looked into a mentor program?
So not relative to PTSD.
Okay. That's another possibility.
Okay.
I bring this up, like I mentioned earlier, that's actually what my forte of my dissertation is resiliency in that. And I say that because once that's complete, I'll be more than glad to share that with you guys.
Okay.
And actually give that, you can do with what you wish to do with it. And I know I'm handing it to the military, they're handling it also, but so are other law enforcement. But once that's done, I'll be glad. And I'll walk you through that study, the mentorship. But it's proven through study, qualitative and quantitative. And that's something I'll be willing to help with. That being said, the other thing I want to mention that's really important, and you hit it on the nose, your qualitative method. And as long as you're in qualitative method, you're always going to supersede, especially when it comes to the human environment over over the quantitative, because quantitative is just numbers.
Right.
And you have too many false positives. So, as you know, I'm familiar with all that. So all I got to do is I want to commend all of you guys on the job you're doing. And the last thing I'm going to say is, what do you need from us to help you and your department?
Well, thanks for asking. So one of the things, and I think we'll get to it when we talk about the annual report, is have somebody. I think Chair Gonzalez spoke about the annual report at the last year when it came up at council, but just be there for the questions from the community and from council about where we're going. I think that some of the council people have wanted more advisement out of the PAC, and I'm not sure what that entails. I mean, the Chair Gonzalez and I have talked about some pretty sensitive topics, and I'm going to pick her brain a little bit more. But making sure that we have those conversations. Sometimes awkward but necessary conversations. And just I think making yourselves available to me to pick your brain. I think that's helpful. I mean, I met with Valerie. I was trying to meet with you, and that kind of fell apart. But
I wasn't here.
oh, that's right, you were out of town.
I was in Florida for the summer with the grandkids. So it's been 3 years, and I'm taking off.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to meet with Kelly either. But kind of pick your brains, find out where your priorities are, and see how we can dovetail that. So, but I do appreciate the support, and it's pretty significant. We talked about what do we do with the Police Advisory Commission. I think that this is a good venue for when something's going south, people can kind of vent their frustrations with the organization, and I see it as a kind of like Stevenson's words, trustometer.
But yeah, I think ourselves, we should probably be more involved with the community itself on outside besides our meetings, in conjunction with you having other stuff going out there. So it's a unity that's out there.
The what?
A unity. So it's a unity within the city, within the council, and within the department. But again, I'm retired. You call me anytime. I'm here. I'm not going nowhere now. But any way we can help, let us know, and we'll be more than happy.
Appreciate it.
And that's it that I have.
Well, we do have, I'm just letting you guys know, even though I can't turn, we have 2 more items for one for Chief Robertson and one for Lieutenant Crivelli. So just to keep that in mind, but go ahead.
My question's very short. I 100% support getting an SRO in the middle school. I'm wondering, is that something that we need to formally say we support this, or it goes straight to city council, or what does that look like time frame wise and process wise?
So I haven't had any objection to having an SR at the middle school, but it's a matter of funding right now.
Okay.
The school district doesn't have the money for it. We don't have the money for an additional personnel. So that's why I was talking about chasing a grant. We had a tobacco grant that allowed us to have an SRO at the middle school, I think from 2021 to 2023 or 4. It was a several-year grant. Maybe it was a 5-year grant. But that went away. And the tobacco grants now specifically say that you cannot hire an SRO under the tobacco grant. I'm sure you've heard of the opioid use settlement money. There's specific language in there because it happened with the tobacco grant that says you cannot use this money for any law enforcement purposes. So we can't hire an SRO under that. So we'll continue to look for grant money and partner with the school district as we can. The conversation is happening, so everybody knows that it's desired. But it's just a matter of funding.
Well, again, I want to thank you because this is like your first full meeting with everything. And one of the things that I do have really appreciated since you've come on board is your willingness to even have a conversation, and that helps with transparency.
Yeah.
So I think I have to request public comment. Is there anyone on Zoom yet?
Yes, we have a participant on Zoom. We will go ahead and open up the floor for public comments. If anyone on our Zoom platform wants to provide a public comment, just raise your hand. No hands are raised, no public comment, Chair.
Okay, and there's no one in the gallery, so I think that's it, unless there's any other discussions that we want to have about this. Okay. So I will move us to the next agenda item. So that is on the annual report. So Chief, back to you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Robertson, Chief of Police. So I wanted to make sure that as we review this, that there's nothing that you guys see that needs to be corrected before I present this to council on November 4th. And I can recap it real quick if you like. Would you like?
Oh, I did look over it, and I think the only thing, and I'll just be transparent and say that I do plan on being at it's the November 8th meeting, I think, where you're presenting
Yes.
the report, right? Yeah. Next Tuesday. Yeah, I have that definitely calendared off, so I will be there to report.
Awesome, thank you.
To there and answer any questions, and just to fulfill like our side of, I've been tracking notes of everything we've discussed ourselves. The only thing that I can't remember Chief Stevenson's last reports and whether he included other data and statistic in there. So I think it'd be interesting because I think he did do some of the data on like use of force and just annual data of like who's
For
been.
the annual report?
Didn't he? Do you remember, Dan?
It's been a while. I don't recall on that.
So this format was pretty much taken from the one that he filed last year.
Okay, if that's the case, then fine. I think that's fine.
Chair.
But I will say that my name is spelled wrong. I just noticed on the background. It's Erica with a K.
So you mentioned that you're going to be attending the meeting to give the report. So if you're going to be speaking on behalf of the commission, then we should have consensus on what you're going to say. Obviously, if you go and you're just speaking on behalf of yourself, giving public comment, that's, you're entitled to do what you want. But that's generally the process for the commission to give specific comments on behalf of the commission.
Oh, okay. So one of the things that because I haven't been able to come this year since the change of administration, my work has gotten out of crazy. So the timing of some of these meetings has not been successful for me to attend. But my plan for this year was essentially to kind of not that dissimilar to what the report says in terms of recapping the meetings and also sharing about my own participation in the interview with Chief Robertson here. So just essentially recapping the change of commission members, as well as I've noted places where we supported some of the police stuff, like the idea of where did I put it? Stacks and the continuing support for Stacks. As well as continuing support for things like the wellness app. That was something that Chief Stevenson reported to us in May. And then with Stacks, the continuing request to help support this program and get a grant manager to help them with the management of all of the stuff. So essentially, that's what I have. Is that not enough notes of what I'm trying to read all my notes.
What was item 1 again? Recap changes of commission members?
Yeah, because I think we had our first, I think since my last report, that was when we got our new commission members, including Mr. Manfredi and Ms. Smith and Kelly, Ms. Escobedo as well.
Okay, so the suggested action for this is to receive the report, and then also commission can pass a motion providing staff direction or alteration or inclusion to the annual report. So I think we can properly read that in to give us an opportunity to have you pass a motion agreeing on the topics that you're going to be included in the commission's report, component of the annual report that you'll orally give. So basically, what I would suggest is pass a motion specifically identifying the 3 topics that you mentioned that you want to include in your report to council, and then we can have a vote on that.
You can do a written report or oral report.
I'm going to do an oral report during the commission's reports section of the city council meeting.
Okay.
Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So I think, so I can make the motion even though it was me proposing the subject?
Yeah, as long as
Okay.
you have a second.
So I make, oh gosh, now I have to write all three things again in the order I did. New commissioners, support for stacks. And the other one I said was support for the wellness app, right? Continued support for the wellness app. Right, because I think Stevenson said something about the needed to continue funded for that. Is that a true statement?
Funded for what?
For the wellness app?
We budget that annually.
Okay.
We split that with fire.
So I can say maybe continued support for the wellness programs, just as a whole. Okay, so
Do you want to take a crack at it, or do you want me to write you out something to?
I'm gonna see if I can take a crack
Okay.
at it. I make a motion to have consensus on what I will report to at the city council meeting. And those things include reporting on the new commissioners, reporting on our support for stacks, and reporting on our support for the wellness programs.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries.
Sue, can you confirm that this is on the agenda for next week and not
Yes,
the 19th?
it's on the, your staff report for the annual report is already loaded in Granicus and it'll be published tomorrow.
I might have the date wrong on there.
And then we need to do the second motion for any staff changes or staff things that I need changed. Does that need to happen?
What I was hearing was that was the plan, that there weren't any specific changes to the written report. If there are, then maybe,
The only change that I see is just the spelling of my name.
okay. I don't think we need a
Okay.
motion to that. Staff can just take note of that to correct that in the report.
Mr. Manfredi, what is your first name?
Alberto.
Okay. I will fix that too.
Yeah, I saw that. It's okay, not a problem.
Oh, I just saw that.
I was scanning the website real quick and I was like, oh, and, okay.
Great. So
Sorry, did we miss public comment on that?
no, we did open it up
For that one, we did.
with the Zoom, and there's one person on Zoom.
Sue, can you confirm that we did with that? Okay, great.
I think you get a break now, Chief, because the next thing is on the agenda is replacing the MRAP with the law enforcement specific rescue vehicle, and that would be Lieutenant Crivelli. Crivelli, I said that weird.
Clicker. All right, hi everybody. I'm Scott Crivelli. I'm a lieutenant with the police department. I'm here to talk about a piece of equipment that we're looking to get to replace our MRAP. So MRAP stands for Mine Resistant Armor Protected. It's a military vehicle. We got this in 2013. It was no cost to us from the military. Since then, it has since been discontinued by the military, and there's a bunch of issues that we have, not issues, but the MRAP has some limitations that we're trying to overcome with this replacement. The biggest issue is there's no service support for it. The company that builds out MRAPs for the military, they're called Navistar, and they will not provide any service support to civilians, even law enforcement. They deem all of the parts and service manuals and information classified. So even if we call and say, hey, this is broken, that's broken, sorry, that's classified. That's literally the answer we get. And because of that, our motor pool has spent just shy of $50,000 on labor, if there's things that break. And most of that cost is just them trying to figure out how to fix it because they have no guidance on this specialized vehicle. There's no service manuals, so they're just trying to figure it out on their own. Because of that, Motor Pool, our mechanics are very supportive of us getting rid of the MRAP and replacing it with this vehicle because I'll get to what we're looking to get. It's a lot easier to service. One of our detectives who's also on the SWAT team, he was a heavy equipment mechanic in the Army and worked on MRAPs. So a lot of this information and experience comes from him. I wasn't in the military, I lean on him, and he worked on MRAPs, so obviously he's an expert, I am not. He explained that, like in our cars, If you have an old car, parts start breaking slowly, time, okay, this broke, and it's kind of spread out over time to where you kind of get an idea, hey, maybe it's time for a new car. He says that's not the case with MRAPs. Basically, one day it's going to be broke, and there's nothing we can do about it. And that's very common in the military. He said it would happen. Another big issue is when we got the MRAP, the military disengaged the engine brake. And obviously that big, heavy piece of machinery needs an engine brake to really safely stop. Because of that, we can't drive it off the hill. We can only drive it locally. It's not safe to take it down Spooner or Echo, no way. When we first got it, this is issue with the service. We reached out to the military, be like, hey, we want to reactivate the engine brake. Sorry, we can't tell you that. It's classified. So another hurdle we have to overcome is it requires a commercial driver's license to drive it, to operate it. We only have one cop right now who has a CDL. So we have to reach out to either a firefighter who's properly endorsed or our mechanics who have CDLs whenever we need to move it. So it kind of becomes an issue. I can't even go down and just drive it out of the airport here. It needs to be someone who's properly licensed. Another big thing is the space and I got pictures of it. The space inside of MRAP is very limited. So when it comes to personnel and rescues, Mr. Manfredi's shaking his head up and down. So I assume he's been inside them once or twice. So it gets pretty tight in there, especially when you put grown men that aren't my size. That's why I said grown. And you put them in there in full kit and you run out of space real quick. So if you have SWAT operators in there and then we need to get kids or whoever in there for rescues, the space is pretty much eaten up. And I'm going to go through some pictures for you. That's it. That's our MRAP. And I know it's kind of been a contentious thing over time. We've had it since 2013, so 12 years. And so what we're replacing it with is law enforcement specific and a lot more. It looks a lot less intimidating in my opinion. That's our MRAP from the front. And this is kind of a illustration of, those are our two tallest SWAT guys. And you can see just with them sitting across from each other, the space is pretty much gone. The picture on the right is what the MRAP looks like empty. And when I have a comparison of what our replacement looks like, you'll see how much more room there is. So the replacement, there's a company called Lenco. They are the leader in law enforcement armored vehicles. They basically take the cabin chassis of a four-wheel drive Ford F-550 with a Ford diesel motor in it, and they build a law enforcement specific armored vehicle. The vehicle comes with a 3-year powertrain warranty from Ford because it's a Ford chassis. And then you get a 3-year warranty on everything Lenco puts on there. And when I say Lenco, that's the manufacturer. Bearcat is the model. Once we're past the warranty period, it's a Ford powertrain, so our mechanics have no issue working on it. We have the motor pool has a Ford master mechanic, so it's just like working on any other Ford truck, essentially, with the same powertrain. It's much smaller, it's more maneuverable, it's better for our urban environment because of its size. You only need a Class C license, so whatever light driver's license to drive a regular car, you can drive one of these. Because of that, it can be safely driven off the hill. We have a lot more capacity inside for both cops and citizens. It comes from the factory, built for law enforcement, and some of those features include the red and blue emergency lighting, siren, PA system. There's 4 independently controlled spotlights on top, a 360-degree camera, an IR camera in the front, bench seating, an overwatch hatch, and run flat off-road tires. Then I got some pictures for you here. And these are just off Google. This isn't, what we are exact. It's the model we would get, but these are just Google images. That's kind of side profile, half side, the back one, and then this is the inside shot where you can see how much, a lot more space inside there. And then the question is to why. I know that this might come up in our conversation. So why do we need an armored vehicle? For one, we're isolated up in Tahoe with just merely geography. We all know if you've lived here for any amount of time that it could be snow, a fire, whatever it may be, and sometimes our ingress and egress can be limited. We might be able to get out, might not be able to get in. Because of that, we kind of have to have the tools we need to do our job here. We cannot rely on EDS. El Dorado Sheriff has one of these models. Douglas County has one of these models, but we can't rely on just using theirs. They might not be able to get up here. Might just say, no, we're not coming up there. Or, hey, we have our own drama to deal with down here. We can't lose our asset and bring it up to you. Also, there would be an extreme delay for whatever, say, an active shooter were to happen. Hey, EDSO, can you come up with your Bearcat? By the time they get their SWAT team together, they drive up from Placerville. We're looking at hours before we were to see something like that in our town. Rescuing. Obviously, an armored vehicle offers safe egress and egress for law enforcement personnel, fire personnel, and members of our community. They're very commonly used across the nation to get people in and out of hot zones, and a hot zone is just an area that's not deemed safe yet, where a lethal threat may be present. We can also use it for other rescues. I remember a specific instance where the streets of Tahoe flooded from heavy rain right after a snow, and there was multiple people who couldn't get to their homes. I remember this specifically because I was working. They couldn't get to, there was medication they needed in their homes, and they couldn't get to their homes because the streets were too flooded. We hopped in the MRAP and started driving people to their houses in order for them to get their medication. So there's other uses for it other than just, a SWAT response. Active shooter response, obviously, God forbid one ever happens in our town, but the reality is that we have to be prepared to handle such situation. A Bearcat would respond to the active shooter scene. We'd use it to evacuate students if need be, evacuate teachers, get medical staff into an area if we need to, get cops into an area, all those things. And most commonly, its use is during SWAT responses for somebody who may be potentially armed. It's unfortunate that that's a reality in today's society, but it is what it is, and Tahoe is no exception. We are tasked with the police department of arresting violent offenders and restoring peace in our community. Myself and the chief, we will not send our personnel out into the field to accomplish these dangerous tasks without having the proper equipment to safely accomplish the goal, which is always a peaceful resolution. One thing with armored vehicles in the SWAT world is it allows for time to slow things down. When you have the advanced cover of armor, we're allowed to stop, put our personnel in a position of safety, establish communication with somebody inside. It kind of takes the element of we have to be in a hurry because we're unsafe. It takes that away. We have the safety of an armored vehicle. We can sit inside it and communicate from outside. We can put our negotiators, our crisis negotiators inside. We can put our CIT trained negotiators inside for mental health negotiations, and they're safe within. So it really offers a lot of safety to our personnel while they're trying to accomplish the task of de-escalation and a peaceful resolution. Public outreach is another component to it. We take the MRAP ends up at multiple public events, National Night Out, Fire Fest, Homecoming, 4th of July airport display, and we also use it to sometimes transport students to senior prom. And we'd get when we talk about engaging the community and having that open relationship and personalizing the uniform, and it really opens the door for that. Kids love getting inside it. It's a great talking point. And in today's world, anything that lets someone's wall come down and have a conversation with a cop, if it's because we're talking about an armored vehicle, so be it. That might be the relationship that changes. That they tell their friend, hey, there's some cool cops up in Tahoe. Great, that's what we're all about. At the last National Night Out, I had a great conversation next to our MRAP with 3 people that were just off the PCT, and I knew nothing about it. So we had a half-hour-long conversation about how they're hiking the PCT all the way up, and it's just those little things that build relationships with people in our community. Costs, the big question. So we've wanted one of these as a department for many years. Obviously, we've been happy with the MRAP because it's free, and we know the cost of a Bearcat is expensive. In the current fiscal year, we already have the budgeted allocation of the police department's funding to cover this cost. So we're not going to the city and asking for more money. This is already in the approved budget for this year. And now that that funding's available, we decided to take that step and try and get an authority to buy it. So based off the costs, as you can see here, with tax, we're just over about 412. The Linco plant is in Massachusetts, so it's obviously pricey to ship something that expensive across the country. And also, they do basically like a service, a delivery for both our employees, and I want to send one of our mechanics out there too. And it's basically like a orientation delivery, and it's not required, but they highly recommended it. So I'm part of that $6,000 is I'm going to send 2 of our cops and 1 of our mechanics out there. They get a full orientation from the manufacturer. This is how everything works. If this breaks, do this, yada, yada, yada. That way, when we get this expensive piece of machinery out there, we're not like, well, what's this switch do? That's kind of like a train the trainer thing. There will be 2 SWAT guys, so they'll be able to come back and then teach everybody else how all the systems work. That's the point behind that. If it's approved by council, I'm taking this to council next Tuesday, November 4th. It'll take 12 to 18 months for Linco to build it out. So once that happens, then we will then give the MRAP back to the military. So that's the end goal. Once that's done, we get that, we give the MRAP back to the military, and then we just have this. And that's all I got. Any questions?
I got some questions. You guys, questions? We did have this commission early on in our establishment. I'd say had a lot of concerns about the MRAP use generally, right? The biggest complaint at that time was the militarization of police, right? So I am concerned of just because like kind of new toy, like how it gets showcased and played. Again, going back to the marginalization conversation, I think there's like the component of it like, hey, this is a cool new gadget and a cool new, I like toys, you know what I mean? So there's that component, but then there's also this other component of like fear, again, with how our current climate is too. These kind of vehicles are everywhere in association with federal law enforcement again. So I guess I think what I'd like to hear is some reassurances on, because I hear what you're saying about how it's used and engaged in public outreach, but also some reassurances that it's, again, also not going to be used at things like the 4th of July parade or like larger events. I'm totally fine with it at your, police night out? What's it called?
National Night
That's National Night Out, and that sort, and your own hosted events. But yeah, I guess that's what I'm looking to hear. Does that make sense?
I think, I get your question. I would say every event is up for discussion in the future. And that's one reason, in our opinion, I don't know if you would think that looks less maybe intimidating or militarized. And that's one, yes, it's a new shiny new toy, but it's a toy designed for what we do. We're kind of making lemonade with lemons with the MRAP because it was free. That's not, it's designed for, the MRAP was designed for warfare in Afghanistan. Is it designed for urban law enforcement? No, absolutely not. But, we made lemonade with lemons because it was free. And we didn't have $430,000 to spend at a Bearcat. When the whole that word came up, and Chief Stevenson was here. I remember he was saying the same thing. Was like, hey, we need an armored vehicle. Period. If you'll give me money for a Bearcat, one of these, I'd be happy to get rid of the MRAP. But we're gonna have something so our cops can be safe when they have to go arrest dangerous people.
No, I think that's helpful. Last time when we had the MRAP, I was someone who was very like anti this, but also the use of it for rescue missions, particularly, I think one thing that really intrigued me was using it like as a satellite command center. Is that the MRAP has that? Does this also have similar features for like the rescue operations? Because I believe Chief Stevenson talked about it in terms of some of the connections during Cal War fire.
we have we have a command vehicle, so that's separate. That provides a mobile dispatch center. But we have put on the MRAP, it's called a repeater. It's a radio repeater, and it has helped with, I can't get into the nerdy stuff about it, but basically it takes someone keying up their radio, bounces it to this antenna, whatever's set up in the MRAP, and then it sends it off, and it makes the radio signal stronger. That was put on the MRAP because we were having an issue with communications. Whether or not that needs to be on the Bearcat, probably unlikely with our new radio system.
I think I'll just close out by saying that I know community members have concern about it, and I think I would encourage them to not only listen to this report out, but the original MRAP report, which I can't remember even when it was, because I think the practical uses for it, I'm less scared of the vehicle as a whole than I was before hearing that. So this is one of the ways to communicate some of the police culture and just the practical use for it. And generally, I think for people who are concerned with the militarization, some of the what pulled me and what might pull other people is the rescue component and the ways that we navigate our town.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the things about the Bearcat is, one, it's lower profile. It doesn't have that 13.5-foot turret on the top. It is basically a bulletproof box. And, it's funny how many people want to get in, it's even the MRAP, get in it, take a picture in it, whatever, and they see that it's just a box. And you talk about the militarization of police, I think the most militarized part on that is the turret. Although no gun mounted in it, right? It's still a turret, right? This has a hatch on the top. That's about it. But it's just a bulletproof box.
Both vehicles I'm familiar. Before I go into it, I'm going to ask, what color scheme are you looking at?
We decided with OD green because we're between that and black.
Okay.
Because we have a member on our SWAT team who came from an agency down in SoCal,
Okay.
and who they had one, and they had black, and he said over time it looked poor, it faded, and he said with our weather here and the snow and sitting outside, and he said black over time started to look crappy. I'd get OD green, so that's what we're doing.
I'm good with that. This vehicle is not threatening. And I can tell you, I've been on many of these other vehicles. In community involvement, and I know you said not 4th of July, that's when they're going to want to see it, and the kids are going to want to get into it. That's when they're going to want to establish that relationship with law enforcement. Because when you open up the back and you see it empty, like you do here, it is very clear that this is made for safety. And one of the things that's important to me in anything, or anybody else, is,
No, I know which one you're talking about.
yeah, it is, you can't put money or value in life. And when a person's back here and on it and in it, and extracting, I don't care what it is. I've done it in combat many times, and when we went in, we had the old Humvees, and it got blown up. We had 3 sandbag layers. And we went flying because we didn't have all the new stuff. That being said, the price isn't that bad, to be honest, compared to the.
Well, maybe we should get two.
Yeah, if you can. But my question that I see all this, you're getting all, I think it's a great thing. I think the color scheme is correct. It'll also blend in. But it's also going to help with rescue, and I think it's going to do more rescue help than anything else. And God help, we never have a shooter
Yeah.
at a school.
Knock on wood.
But I think it's something that the city needs to know about, the people need to know about, because it's all part of the community. Because they're getting away from this tactical military vehicle that is daunting. The federal government uses this type of stuff. They use these too, but the federal government has a tendency to be intimidating. And they want to do that and they do it on purpose. Okay, we're not doing that here. And I think it's a great thing. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. But we got to look at the future of, we want it to build it with the community.
Sure, I mean, and just a quick response, because I know you have a question. I think, again, what is threatening and what isn't is very subjective, right? And I've worked with crime victims my entire life. It doesn't, a police vehicle with a siren is threatening to those people. So I agree, and that's why I said, in emphasizing, understanding what it's for. But, I mean, does it need, we could debate whether it needs to be for certain things. Like Chief in his old time, a police car this time was also like really open and like welcoming and just seeing him too. So I just want to highlight, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but the subjectivity of what our community deems as threatening and not, I think is just something to have on the top of our minds.
And you're right, and that's important, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Manfredi. It seems like a really valuable piece of equipment to do your job, to do it safely, and to keep you guys protected for our community and your own officers. It is subjective of what's threatening versus what isn't. But having seen Douglas County with this, like everybody wants to check out this vehicle when they have it at any community event, from the little kids to old adults. Like, it's less threatening the more people see it and they really like it and get excited. So I think that'll actually help a lot with community engagement. It's a cool vehicle.
What I would like to do, if the commission agrees, is this is on the consent agenda on the 4th, but in the event a council member pulls it and wants a discussion, I'd like to be able to report that we have the support from PAC with the purchase.
Yeah, my consent, would you concur, agree?
It's actually a receive and
It's a
file
receive
item.
and file.
So you can definitely take the comments that they provided and
Copy that. Thank you.
And my follow-up question was to you, do I have to make a new motion to add that to the thing that we discussed? For the report back for next week?
to add,
Just so like, because as part of like the wrap-ups for the annual report.
She wanted to add to her motion in item 3 to
Yeah.
include this in her report.
sorry, item 3, we did that motion about.
Yes, and
You're saying you
now-
want to add,
Yeah, if I
About
add
the-
it up
about
as a
the MRAP.
wrap-up.
I think that item has already been closed out, so I think it's too late
Okay.
to add that.
No, that's totally fine. I'll just save it on my notes for next year.
Well, it's on the annual report.
Okay. Well, so it's already mentioned. Okay. I won't worry about it. Okay, so technically, I got to open this up for public comment.
Yes.
There's no one in the gallery. Is there
And we
anyone on
do
Zoom?
have a hand raised on Zoom.
Okay.
We'll open up Trevor Designs.
Lieutenant, I think you might have to come.
We can't hear you. Maybe try hitting, let's see, what is it? *6 to unmute your phone. We still can't hear you. Trevor, do you want to try to maybe just call in on your phone? We'll give him just a minute to try to. He has lowered his hand. You can always email me at sblankenship@cityofslt.gov, and I can distribute your comments to the planning commissioners if you're unable to connect at this time. All right, no additional comments, Chair.
Okay. So with that, I will move us to staff reports and announcement. Anything from the clerk?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I'll be discussing the regular city council agenda with the city manager, and that will go forward on November 19th. And then based on that, I'll work with the chief to get our 2026 PAC calendar. Your next meeting will be approximately the second week in February.
Can I ask that when you all are looking at it to again do the last meeting before the annual report?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that worked out best. And next time, we'll put the annual report last in case there's anything else from the agenda you want to add.
One of the things is that I know the SRO discussion keeps escaping. It's because our SRO's been on vacation for the last meeting and this meeting, so I haven't forgotten about it. We'll try and do it in the first meeting coming in February. Earlier this month, we awarded a Medal of Valor to 2 of our boat officers for the rescues they did on June 21st when the lake went upside down. The city manager gave the Sugar Pine Award to the VHR team for, we hold the VHR team at the police department, but we integrated other divisions of the city into it, and they gave the VHR team that Sugar Pine Award for the application and permitting system. We just had 2 officers complete our field training program. We currently have 1 officer in the academy. Our lateral hiring process is in the works. 1 position, 2, 3. 3 positions to be hired. We just hired our 2nd CSO supervisor, and we have 1 CSO position left to fill. And after 4 years of trying to get there, we are training our 9th and final dispatcher, so we can move them to a schedule that's conducive to them having a personal life again, and end the incessant overtime to staff the communication center. We just completed the parking and garage improvements phase 2, which included the parking revenue system, the automated parking guidance system, which is basically says, hey, there's space in here, come park here, and electric vehicle charging. We have 14 spaces that allow for electric vehicle charging in there. We're gonna try and work on phase 3 this year, which is paint on the interior and improved lighting. So it's been a multi-year project. We're glad that some of it's coming to conclusion finally. We've had lieutenants and sergeants get promoted, and our new detectives are getting acclimated to their new surroundings. September 11th saw major joint operations to the feds targeting guns, drug, and ties to the cartel. 10 arrests were in California, 7 in Nevada. They served 13 search warrants. Of the 13 locations, 9 of them were in South Lake Tahoe. They recovered 4 guns, 3 stolen cars, a bunch of drugs, and some warrant arrests. That same day, the police department participated in the American Legion 9/11 Memorial. On October 17th, we celebrated, well, not celebrated, but remembered the 10-year anniversary since we lost Officer Hounsel and his wife in a car crash. Friday is Halloween, and the PD will be at the Village doing trunk or treat. And we're still working on finalizing this, but we've been, since probably May, June, we've been working on finalizing Shop with a Cop for December. So those are the things we got in the works and everything that's happened.
Nothing to report.
So I'll move us on to commissioner reports and announcements, and also this is an opportunity to ask, or if you want something on the agenda for February. Well, I was thinking maybe, because it is a little bit of a hot topic, about VHR enforcement and what that actually looks like on your end. And it'd be interesting to see how many responses. I'd be interested in some of the data, like how many response or complaints you're getting, what the responses look like. I know that potentially there's a lot to change between now and February on the VHR stuff.
Right.
So whatever, but it'd be interesting to hear what your enforcement looks like in that area.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're on really on the ramping up in that. Not a whole lot of complaints. A lot of our stuff is generated internally as far as the citations. So the complaints haven't really ramped up. I think we're at just over 400 permits have been issued. So I'll bring that data back in February, and we'll have some of our VHR enforcers coming and chat.
Was there a second from another commissioner to bring that back?
I'll second that.
Okay, great, thank you.
And then I'm trying to think, can't remember if it's February or the June meeting where the, the stats, from the system. What's that system called where they're taking data
The
of
RIPA data?
RIPA, thank you. I can't remember if it's not in February or June where the regularly scheduled one is. I'd be open to having it in either month, whenever like the collection time is.
Okay, I'll look at what the schedule was from last year and move it accordingly.
Yeah. Does
Do
anyone
we have
want-
a second for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Any other things you want?
Yes. I was wondering if in some point in the future, it doesn't have to be next meeting, but maybe in 2026, an update on human trafficking in our community, because I know we're kind of a thoroughfare for that, and it does pop up in the news every once in a while. If we can just get an update on what police does to help stop that and what current trends look like.
Do we have a second for that?
I'll do a second.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification, what information are you looking for?
Human trafficking in the community, just what you guys do to help stop that, to catch that, any current stats on that, because I know it seems like every year or so there's a story about something that happens and you guys interacted with it to, like, you caught something, and I wasn't sure what was going on with that. So just an update on things.
Okay.
Okay, and if that's everything, I think we can adjourn for today. So thank you.